They didn't just trespass on my land, they ripped a trench straight through my grandfather's grave to build their luxury golf course pipeline. Dawn light on a raw dirt scar slicing through wildflower meadow, diesel smell mixing with torn sagebrush roots, that bronze plaque with Grandpa Thaddeus's name crushed flat in the dirt pile like a beer can. The HOA president, Vivian Stroud, didn't even look up when I confronted her. Just kept scrolling, acrylic nails clicking on the screen. We followed every legal channel, darling. You desecrated a burial site. She laughed short and sharp. Show me a death certificate. Ashes aren't legally interred. That's when I knew she'd made a fatal mistake. I'd spent 15 years dissecting water contracts for Denver District Court. Out here in Wyoming, whoever controls the water writes the rules. 3 months later, I owned the creek feeding her entire gated community. Eminent domain works both ways, Vivian. Drop a comment if an HOA has ever steamrolled you and tell me where you're watching from. My name is Marlo Coltrane, call me Marley. And 3 years ago, I inherited 240 acres of high desert rangeland in Fremont County, Wyoming that my grandfather homesteaded in 1948. Thaddeus came back from the war with a duffel bag and a land grant. Built everything from scratch, the house, the barn, that 1952 windmill that still creaks in the wind. He was 1/4 Shoshone, and he knew this land the way some people know music, where the springs run underground, which pastures flood in April, where the soil remembers old buffalo trails. He taught me to read survey maps at his kitchen table when I was 9, the smell of burnt coffee, his calloused finger tracing property lines. Land doesn't lie, Marley. People do. When he died in 2019, I scattered his ashes in our southeast pasture near a cottonwood grove. No formal burial, just me, the wind, and meadowlarks at sunrise. I'd spent 15 years as a water rights paralegal in Denver. Good career, bad marriage. By 2021, I was divorced, 49, and pretty broken. I sold my practice, cashed out my 401k, and came home to rehabilitate the ranch. Rotational grazing, native grass restoration, a small beef CSA. Turns out land heals you if you let it. Then Ridgemont Estates happened. Spring 2023. I'm walking fence line and spot orange survey stakes running straight through Thaddeus's grove. Every 50 feet, like a line of small fires. No warning, no letter, nothing. At the county clerk's office, I discover Ridgemont filed for private condemnation 6 weeks earlier. Certified letter sent to a P.O. box I'd closed in 2021. Classic move. Here's what Ridgemont is, a 2,200 home gated community built 3 miles east on former BLM land. Artificial lake, 18-hole golf course. McMansions, starting at $850,000 in a high desert where we get 12 inches of rain a year. Their golf course alone uses more water than 40 family ranches combined. They pull it from Clearstone Reservoir, a public watershed built in 1963 for agricultural irrigation, and now they want a dedicated pipeline to expand their clubhouse. The route? Straight through my land. The legal trick? An obscure Wyoming statute allowing HOAs to claim easement if there's no economically viable alternative. Which is garbage. They could have run it along County Road for an extra $200,000, but that would mean negotiating instead of steamrolling. The woman running this show is Vivian Stroud, 61, retired pharma VP white Lexus with vanity plate RULS4U, voice like honey poured over barbed wire. When I found the construction schedule posted at their marble lobby clubhouse pipeline installation. Start date, Monday, May 8th. I had 3 days. I tried talking to her. You saw how that went, so I drove home that Friday evening, parked my truck, and walked out to the cottonwood grove. They'd already staked orange construction fence around 2 acres of wildflowers. The survey line cut right through where I'd scattered Thaddeus's ashes. Wind picked up. Cottonwood leaves made that papery rustle that always sounded like him shuffling maps. I sat in the dirt, let myself cry for 5 minutes. Then I called Hector Ruiz, my old Denver colleague who specialized in water law, and told him I needed an emergency injunction filed by Monday morning, because Vivian had just made a critical miscalculation. She assumed I'd roll over because I was one woman against an HOA with a 3-attorney firm from Jackson Hole. What she didn't know, I'd spent 15 years finding loopholes in water contracts for people way smarter than her. And in Wyoming, water law has more trapdoors than a haunted house. That weekend was a blur of coffee and legal documents. Hector Ruiz answered his phone at 9 p.m. Friday without complaint. We'd worked together 6 years in Denver, him litigating water cases, me finding the precedents that won them. When I explained Ridgemont's play, he went silent. Then, private condemnation for a golf course in a drought year, and they sent notice to a dead address? Can we stop them? Maybe. Emergency TRO citing improper service plus NAGPRA Native American Graves Protection Act. If Thaddeus's Shoshone heritage qualifies, federal law trumps state condemnation. But we need documentation, tribal enrollment, land patents, anything. I spent Saturday night in the attic pulling boxes, found Thaddeus's Pine Ridge enrollment papers, his 1948 land patent, discharge papers from Anzio. Spread them on the kitchen table at 3 a.m., moths battering the screen door, coyotes yipping outside. That alkali dust taste in my throat from forgetting to drink water. Sunday afternoon, Hector filed the TRO. Judge Vernon Kemp, fourth-generation rancher, hated corporate overreach, scheduled Monday hearing. Hector texted Sunday night, Kemp's sympathetic, we've got a shot. I watched sunrise Monday morning and thought, maybe this works. It didn't. Vivian brought 3 attorneys from Caliber and Doss Jackson Hole's most aggressive firm. They walked into that courtroom like they owned it. Their lead attorney, Pritchard, presented a county geologist affidavit. No marked graves in GS database. Then an anthropologist's report. Thaddeus's Pine Ridge enrollment was jurisdictionally irrelevant in eastern Shoshone territory. Then the kill shot. Your Honor, Ridgemont began excavation Friday evening before this TRO existed. The trench is open. Cottonwood roots severed. Halting now wastes resources and leaves dangerous excavation exposed. They'd started digging the night I found the stakes. Judge Kemp looked pained. Mr. Pritchard, your clients began work before notice of this hearing. Friday's work fell within the county-approved schedule, Your Honor. Technically legal, morally bankrupt. Kemp sighed. TRO denied. Ridgemont will hire a third-party archaeologist to monitor remaining excavation. Ms. Coltrane, you may appeal with a $75,000 bond. Money I didn't have. Vivian walked past me in the courthouse hallway. Didn't speak. Just smiled tight, victorious heels clicking on marble. When I got home, the backhoe was already there. Yellow metal dinosaur parked on cottonwood roots. 10-foot trench gaping through the meadow like an open wound. The foreman met me at my truck. Weathered face, kind eyes, holding something. Thaddeus's bronze memorial plaque. Bent, mud-caked. First scoop, he said quietly. I'm sorry. I've got orders. The smell of diesel mixed with torn earth. Meadowlarks always singing there silent for the first time ever. I sat in my truck holding that broken plaque, hands shaking. Then I noticed the survey map on my mailbox. At the top, small print. Water source. Clearstone Reservoir, U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. Supply allocation managed by Fremont Watershed District. Ridgemont didn't own this water. They were allocated it by a public board, which meant contracts, renewal terms, public records. I drove to county records, started pulling Watershed District files, buried in a 1987 bylaw amendment, never digitized, just yellowed paper in a filing cabinet. I found it. Any private entity consuming over 500 acre-feet annually must renegotiate allocation every 10 years or demonstrate conservation infrastructure matching 15% of draw. Ridgemont's golf course used 620 acre-feet per year, according to their own 2020 environmental statement. Last renegotiation, 2014, 10 years ago. Here's what that means. In Western water law, failing to renew your allocation is like forgetting to renew your car registration, except the penalty is losing your legal right to use the water entirely. The Watershed District could void Ridgemont's contract with a single vote. I photocopied that bylaw. Hands steady for the first time in days. Vivian thought she'd won. She'd just opened the door for me to take everything. Vivian struck back 48 hours after the hearing. Every homeowner in Ridgemont Estates, 2,200 families, woke up to an email with the subject line, "Local rancher threatens your water access." The message painted me as a selfish obstructionist blocking critical infrastructure, driving up their costs, endangering their children's access to clean water. My phone lit up that afternoon with blocked numbers. Voicemails calling me selfish bitch, entitled, "Living alone on all that land while families suffered." One guy just breathed heavy for 30 seconds and said, "Watch your back." I reported it to the sheriff. He took notes, promised to keep an eye out. That universal law enforcement phrase meaning absolutely nothing would happen. Thursday, I was reaching for frozen peas at the grocery store when a woman in yoga pants blocked my cart. Ridgemont logo on her water bottle. She was loud enough for the whole aisle to hear. My water bill went up 40% because of you. We have 3 kids, but you don't care about families, do you? The manager escorted her out while people stared. I left my cart and drove home with my hands shaking. That night, someone cut 40 feet of my fence with bolt cutters, leaving jagged wire edges that could disembowel a cow. 16 head of cattle wandered onto County Road 12 before dawn. 4 hours to round them up. $1,200 in impound fees. No proof, but the timing screamed Ridgemont. Then Vivian's attorneys filed a counterclaim demanding $250,000 for construction delays my TRO allegedly caused $18,000 per day, they calculated with surgical precision. Hector called it a slap suit, designed to drain me financially until I collapsed. Fighting it would cost $40,000 I didn't have. My savings account had $22,000, and that needed to cover fence repairs, legal fees, and the daily reality of keeping a ranch alive. I couldn't sleep. Started researching water law at 2 a.m., clicking through Bureau of Reclamation archives until my eyes burned and my dog scout sighed dramatically from his bed because I wasn't coming to sleep. That's when I found Clearstone Reservoir's 1963 master plan buried in a PDF. Original purpose, agricultural irrigation for family farms. Current allocation split 3 ways, 60% agriculture, 30% municipal, 10% private domestic. Ridgemont fell into that last category, sharing space with rural homes and small ranches. But their golf course alone consumed 620 acre-feet annually, according to their own environmental statement, more than every other private user combined. I filed a FOIA request. 2 weeks later, a CDROM arrived with 4,000 scanned pages. I read for 3 nights straight, coffee going cold, highlighter running dry, until I found the 1987 bylaw buried in the watershed district, meeting minutes. Any private entity using over 500 acre-feet must renegotiate every 10 years or prove conservation infrastructure. Ridgemont's allocation started in 2014. Renegotiation was due in 2024. They were overdue. But then I found something better. The Fremont Watershed District Board had 7 members. 6 were ranchers and small-town officials, people who might actually listen to reason. The 7th was Dalton Stroud, who ran a feed supply store and got elected in 2021. I pulled 3 years of meeting minutes. Every vote on Ridgemont's water. Dalton voted yes. Every expansion, yes. Every concern from ranchers about overuse. Dalton shut it down. And nowhere in the public record had he disclosed one crucial fact: Vivian Stroud, Ridgemont's HOA president, was his sister. I cross-referenced the dates. Ridgemont's clubhouse expansion approved. March 2022, Dalton's vote. Pipeline easement fast-tracked. January 2023, Dalton's vote. The pattern was a neon sign. Here's what matters. Water boards wield massive power in the West, but ethics rules are ironclad. Board members must disclose family ties, financial relationships, anything creating bias. Failure to disclose doesn't just void their votes. It opens the entire board to legal liability and triggers mandatory state investigation. I called Hector at 11 at night. Vivian's brother sits on the watershed board. Never disclosed the relationship. He's been approving everything Ridgemont requests. Long silence. Then, Jesus, Marley. That's grounds for a state investigation. We file a formal complaint with the engineer's office. They have to audit every decision he touched, and during investigation, all pending allocations freeze. Exactly. If the audit finds violations, Ridgemont could lose their water entirely. I smiled for the first time in 2 weeks. Vivian had spent a month trying to bury me with lawsuits and harassment, thinking she had the system wired through her brother's position. She didn't know I'd just found the wire cutters. Draft the complaint, I said, and make it hurt. I couldn't fight this alone. I needed expertise, media, and voices that carried weight beyond a courtroom. First call, Iris Pendleton, a hydrologist whose name kept appearing in the 1990s water disputes. She'd spent 30 years fighting overallocation in Wyoming basins before retiring to Lander. I called cold, expecting a polite no. She picked up on the second ring. I pitched fast. Gated community stealing public water for a golf course. Need someone who gives a damn? She laughed sharp, delighted. You had me at stealing public water. Come by tomorrow. We met at a diner. She was 68, silver braid, soil-stained hands. I spread my research across the table allocation records, Dalton's voting pattern, Ridgemont's water use. She read in silence, occasionally making disgusted noises. Then, 620 acre-feet for grass in a drought basin? 3 ranches south of you have wells dropping 18 inches annually. The Shoshone fish hatchery can barely keep cutthroat alive because creek flows are so low. She pulled out a notebook. Give me 2 weeks. I'll model exactly how much water they're stealing from every downstream user. Can you testify? Try stopping me. Next, I needed media. I emailed Tyrell Booker at the Casper Star-Tribune. He'd written investigative pieces on fracking water abuse. Subject line, HOA Waters golf course while ranchers' wells run dry. He called within an hour. Met me at a truck stop off I-25. 44, Wyoming Cowboys cap, recorded everything on his phone. I gave him copies of Dalton's undisclosed relationship, the allocation overruns, Iris's preliminary data. He read twice. This is good. But I need proof. Regular homeowners don't know what Vivian's doing. If they're complicit, it's a different story. That night, I pulled Ridgemont's HOA disclosures, monthly newsletters, budget summaries, everything supposedly transparent. Nothing mentioned overdue renegotiation, nothing about Dalton's board position, nothing about the $4.2 million bond Ridgemont took out in 2023. Wait, $4.2 million? I found the bond filing buried in county records. Collateralized by future water infrastructure value, the pipeline, the clubhouse expansion, the irrigation system. Page 17 had the poison pill. Ridgemont must maintain uninterrupted water service to golf course and clubhouse, or the bank could foreclose on all common assets, pool, rec center, roads, everything. If they lost water allocation, the bond defaulted. The bank seized assets. Property values cratered because amenities were the only reason people paid $850,000 for desert McMansions. Vivienne had bet the entire community's future on water she didn't legally control and never told a soul. I sent the documents to Ty. She's been hiding a financial bomb from 2,200 families. Jesus, this is page 1. Then I went to the monthly Cattlemen's Association meeting. 30 ranchers in a VFW hall smelling like burnt coffee and decades of cigarette smoke soaked into the walls. I stood during open comment. Ridgemont's pulling more water than 40 family ranches. Their allocation expired. The board member rubber stamping everything is Vivian Stroud's brother. Anyone else tired of them stealing what's ours? Silence. Then Gil Navarro stood, third-generation rancher, weathered and careful. Vivian offered me double market value for my Southern 40 last year. I said no. County reassessed my property taxes the next month, up 32%. He looked around. Anyone else get reassessed after refusing Ridgemont? 3 hands went up. After the meeting, Gil pulled me aside. I've got kids in their private school. Can't be your public face, but documents, testimony, cash if you need it, you've got it. 4 other ranchers quietly said the same. I drove home past midnight, windows down, sage smell mixing with distant rain. For the first time in weeks, my chest didn't feel tight. Vivian had money, lawyers, and a marble clubhouse built on borrowed time. I had a hydrologist who wanted blood, a reporter hungry for truth, and ranchers who remembered when water law protected the people who actually lived on the land. She'd built her empire on a house of cards. I was about to light a match. Late June, 95 degrees, no rain in sight, Clearstone Reservoir dropping 2 inches per week. You could see the white calcium ring around the water line from my porch, the scar of a basin being drained dry. I was reviewing Iris's hydrological model when she mentioned something offhand. You know Clearstone's fed mostly by Antler Creek, right? Tiny spring-fed tributary on the old Drummond Ranch. Family sold out in 2019. Some California LLC bought it and never did anything with the land. I froze. Water rights transfer with the land? Not always. Western families often retain rights when they sell. She shrugged. Why? I drove home with my heart pounding, pulled up property records. Drummond Ranch, 880 acres, sold to Blue Ridge Holdings LLC for $1.9 million. I found the deed addendum buried on page 12. Drummond family retained senior water rights to Antler Creek, priority date 1904, senior rights. In drought, they get water first, before Ridgemont, before everyone. But water rights require renewal. I checked the state engineer's database. Status? Expires August 15, 2025 without renewed application. 6 weeks away. My hands were shaking when I called Blue Ridge's registered law firm. Got bounced through 3 assistants before someone knew anything. Drummond property? We're liquidating. Development stalled. What about the water rights? Those revert to state in August unless someone renews them. You interested? LLC would probably take $80,000 just to clear the books. $80,000. I had 22 in savings, had already burned 3 on legal fees. But here's what that money would buy. Senior water rights to the creek, supplying 35% of Clearstone's inflow. In Wyoming's allocation system, senior rights trump everything, and during drought, junior users like Ridgemont get cut first. If I owned Antler Creek's rights, I could legally reduce their water to a trickle without breaking a single law. I called Hector. I found a way to shut off Ridgemont's water. Legally? Completely. The creek feeding Clearstone has senior water rights for sale 1904 priority date. If I own them, I control the tap. Long pause. Marley, just owning those rights gives you leverage. You don't have to actually use them. Mutually assured destruction keeps everyone honest. What if I want to use them? Then you're punishing 2,200 families who didn't know what Vivian was doing. I thought about the hate mail, the grocery store confrontation, my cut fence, Vivian's courtroom smirk, the bronze plaque sitting broken on my counter. Those families elected her. They built mansions in the desert expecting infinite water. My voice was steady. Maybe consequences are the only teacher that works. Silence. Then, sleep on it. We've got 6 weeks before that deadline. I walked outside at sunset. The Wind River peaks glowed copper. My windmill creaked. Somewhere underground, the pipeline hummed, carrying water to keep Kentucky bluegrass alive in a place where only sagebrush should grow. I wasn't going to sleep on it. I'd buy those water rights, not as leverage, as a weapon. I needed $85,000 in 6 weeks. First move, Ty Booker's article hit the Casper Star-Tribune on July 2nd. Gated communities' water gluttony threatens rural livelihoods. He'd framed it perfectly, not Marley versus Ridgemont, but systemic theft of public water for luxury golf courses while working ranches dried up. Quoted Iris's data on failing wells downstream. Quoted Gill about suspicious tax reassessments. Included a sidebar explaining Wyoming water law in plain English. It went viral in agriculture circles. Reddit thread, Facebook group, emails within 48 hours. How can we help? Hector advised, frame it as defending family ranching, not commercial investment. That's protected advocacy speech. I launched a GoFundMe. Help a family rancher protect water rights from corporate overreach. Didn't name Ridgemont, didn't need a defamation suit. Emphasized grandfather's legacy, small-scale agriculture, David versus Goliath. 12 days, $41,000. Emails from Wyoming, Montana, Colorado, ranchers who'd fought their own battles. Sustainable ag influencers shared it. Someone in Vermont sent 500 with a note. My great-grandfather lost his farm to developers in 1987. Make them pay. Still 44,000 short, which meant selling cattle. Dawn, I walked out to the pasture. 70 head of registered Angus, 60 years of Thaddeus's careful breeding, steam rising off their backs. Selling 25 would net 38,000 and gut my operation for 5 years, but losing meant Ridgemont's lawyers would bury me entirely. I called the auction house. 25 head. How fast? Tuesday sale. Bring 'em Monday. Tuesday afternoon, the trailer pulled away, dust plume on gravel. My herd cut by 40%. The pasture looked like a smile with missing teeth. Gil Navarro showed up that evening with a check for $6,000. No interest, no timeline. Pay me back when Ridgemont's dead. Total, $85,000. Exactly enough. Hector had the strategy mapped like a chess endgame, 3 simultaneous moves. Move 1. File water rights claim with state engineer by August 15th. Demonstrate beneficial use through ecosystem restoration and agricultural drought reserve. Here's the critical piece. In Western water law, you don't own water, you own the right to use it. And priority date is everything. During shortages, older claims get water first. My 1904 claim would always trump Ridgemont's 2014 allocation. Move 2. Purchase Antler Creek rights from Blue Ridge Holdings. Hector negotiated to 80,000 flat. Closing, August 10th. Move 3. File complaint with state engineer about Ridgemont's expired renegotiation and Dalton's undisclosed conflict. Once filed, mandatory investigation, and all pending allocations froze during review. Iris completed her hydrological model mid-July. I drove to her house, found maps spread across her dining table like surgical plans. If you exercise senior rights during drought, Clearstone drops 35%. She traced downstream impacts with her finger. Fremont Watershed Protocol suspends private domestic users first. Ridgemont's allocation stops completely. Can they fight it? Not successfully. Your 1904 date beats their 2014. Water court isn't negotiable. She looked at me. Question is whether you can live with it. Can they live with desecrating my grandfather's grave? She smiled, thin and satisfied. I'll testify to that. Ty staged his articles for impact. Second piece, mid-July. Rancher versus HOA, modern David and Goliath. Photos of my ranch, the broken plaque, the pipeline scar. Human interest angle that made me sympathetic. Third piece scheduled for August 24th, the day before the watershed meeting. Undisclosed conflicts on water board. The Dalton Stroud expose with emails, voting records, everything documented. It would detonate exactly when I needed maximum public pressure. My neighbor's daughter set up my TikTok, posted videos explaining water law in 60-second chunks. One showing the broken plaque got 400,000 views. Comments mostly supportive, though Ridgemont residents called me an eco-terrorist making children go thirsty. I hired 2 off-duty deputies to patrol my property through August. Installed trail cameras that caught the white Lexus doing 2 a.m. drive-bys twice. Still no proof on the fence cutting, but the pattern was obvious. August 10th, 3:47 p.m., I signed papers at the county clerk's office. Antler Creek water rights, 121 years of seniority, priority claim 14 officially mine. I drove home and walked to the Cottonwood Grove. Pipeline humming underground. The trench filled and reseeded but still visible. Grass not quite grown back. I knelt where Thaddeus's ashes mixed with soil. I got it, Grandpa. I got the water. Wind picked up. Cottonwood leaves rustled like shuffling survey maps. 2 weeks until the watershed district meeting. 2 weeks to find out if this saved the ranch or destroyed everything. I stood, brushed dirt off my knees, and headed home. The war was about to start. Vivian found out I was up to something on August 12th. Dalton called her, I know, because Gil's wife works at the feed store, and overheard him on the phone in the back office, voice tight with panic. Some rancher filed a claim on Antler Creek. State engineer's office is auditing our allocation. Vivian showed up at my ranch 2 days later. I was fixing a water trough when the white Lexus rolled up my driveway, dust cloud following like a curse. She got out wearing linen slacks and sunglasses that probably cost more than my truck payment. Marlo, we need to talk. I kept working on the trough. Get off my property. I'm here to offer a solution. She pulled an envelope from her purse. $150,000. Cash. You drop whatever complaint you filed, sign a non-disclosure agreement, and we all move forward. I straightened up, wiped my hands on my jeans. You think you can buy me? I think you're a smart woman who understands that fighting costs money you don't have. Her voice dropped, lost the syrupy sweetness. You have no idea who you're dealing with, Marlo. I've buried people for less than this. That a threat? She smiled, put her sunglasses back on. It's a fact. Think about my offer. She drove away, leaving me standing there with my heart pounding and my hands shaking, not from fear, from rage. 2 days later, Wyoming Department of Agriculture showed up. Anonymous complaint alleged I was overgrazing, violating stocking density regulations. The inspector was apologetic, clearly knew it was bullshit, but had to do his job. Spent 6 hours walking my pastures, checking fences, counting cattle. Passed easily. But it cost me 2 days of work and a spike in blood pressure I didn't need. Then the op-ed hit the Jackson Hole News and Guide. Eco-warrior or eco-terrorist? Rancher's water grab threatens thousands. Written by someone named Marcus Fenway Wall, I Googled him. Found out he was a consultant who'd worked for 3 different HOA management companies. The piece painted me as a radical environmentalist weaponizing water law to punish families for the crime of wanting nice homes. Comments section filled with vitriol. My email inbox exploded. 2 death threats detailed enough I reported them to the sheriff, who filed them and did nothing else. I stopped sleeping well. Started checking the trail cameras obsessively. The Lexus kept appearing at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., always just driving slowly past. August 20th, the state engineer's office scheduled an official inspection of Antler Creek. Claudia Wen, senior hydrologist, would evaluate my beneficial use claim and review Ridgemont's allocation simultaneously. I hiked the property at dawn that morning with Iris, making sure everything looked legitimate, creek flow healthy, native vegetation thriving, no signs of waste or abuse. At 10 a.m., Claudia arrived. Mid-50s, no nonsense, carried herself like someone who'd spent 30 years dealing with liars and knew all their tells. We shook hands. Then Vivian's Escalade pulled up, followed by 2 Caliber and Doss attorneys in a rented SUV. Dalton Stroud climbed out of the Escalade looking sweaty and nervous. Claudia's expression didn't change. Miss Stroud, this is a technical site evaluation, not a public forum. My community's water supply is at stake. I have every right to observe. Vivian's smile was pure ice. We hiked to the creek. I presented my 30-page restoration plan. Iris had helped draft it. Native cutthroat trout habitat restoration, a state conservation priority. Emergency livestock water for neighboring ranches during drought. Partnership with Eastern Shoshone Tribe for cultural site protection around Cottonwood Groves. Claudia read in silence, occasionally making notes. Her poker face was impenetrable. Vivian interrupted 3 times, trying to argue my application was retaliatory and fraudulent. Each time, Claudia cut her off with bureaucratic precision. Finally, Vivian snapped. This is a sham! She's doing this to punish us for legally exercising our infrastructure rights. Claudia looked up from her clipboard. Ma'am, the applicant's motivation is irrelevant under Wyoming statute. Only lawful beneficial use and priority date matter. She turned to me. Your 1904 claim is senior to every other user on this watershed. If your use plan is legitimate and preliminary review suggests it is, your rights are absolute. She looked at Dalton. Mr. Stroud, your allocation renegotiation is 5 years overdue. Perhaps focus on that rather than interfering with a legal site inspection. Dalton tried to speak. Now, Claudia, let's be reasonable, but she held up a hand. If you're attempting to influence a state proceeding based on personal relationships, I'll refer this to the Attorney General's office. Are we clear? Dalton went pale, shut his mouth. Vivian stared at me with pure hatred, the kind of look that says this isn't over, not even close. Claudia finished her inspection, told me she'd approve the claim pending final paperwork due by August 25th. She also flagged Ridgemont's allocation for immediate compliance review, 30-day deadline to demonstrate conservation infrastructure or face suspension. They drove away in silence. I stood there with Iris, watching dust settle on the dirt road. She's going to escalate, Iris said quietly. I know. Be careful, Marley. That night, my hay barn caught fire. The fire started at 2:17 a.m. on August 16th. I woke to Scout barking frantically and the smell of smoke pouring through my bedroom window. Stumbled outside in my pajamas to see the hay barn fully engulfed flames 40 feet high, turning night into orange daylight. The heat hit my face like opening an oven. The horses were in the adjacent corral, screaming and kicking at the rails. I ran barefoot across gravel, opened the gate, and they bolted past me into the darkness. Better loose than dead. Fire department arrived 18 minutes later. By then the barn was a skeleton of burning timber, roof collapsed inward. They saved the nearby equipment shed, but the hay barn was total loss, $60,000 worth of winter feed and structure, gone. The arson investigator showed up at dawn, found accelerant residue near the foundation, gasoline or kerosene deliberately poured. No suspects, but my trail camera footage showed a vehicle without plates on the county road at 11 p.m. Couldn't make out the model, but the shape looked familiar. Boxy. SUV-sized. The sheriff took my statement, wrote everything down. Said they'd investigate. We both knew that meant nothing without hard proof. I sat on my porch steps at sunrise wrapped in a blanket that smelled like smoke and cried for the first time since the courtroom. Not from sadness, from exhaustion. From the realization that Vivian was willing to commit actual crimes now, not just legal maneuvering. I called Hector at 7 a.m. My barn burned down, arson. I can't prove it was her, but we both know it was. Long silence. Marley, maybe you should step back if she's willing to— No, she's escalating to violence. This isn't worth dying over. I'm 3 days from filing the final paperwork. 3 days from locking in those water rights forever. My voice was steadier than I expected. If I quit now, Thaddeus's grave means nothing. The broken fence means nothing. The hate mail and death threats mean nothing. She wins. And if your house burns next? Then I sleep on Gil's couch and finish this anyway. Another pause. I'll drive up. Stay at your place through the filing deadline. I've got a shotgun. You don't have to. Yes, I do. I'm leaving Denver in an hour. He arrived that afternoon with a duffel bag, a Remington 870, and a grim expression. Set up in my guest room, like he was settling in for a siege. August 17th, Ridgemont's attorneys filed an emergency motion in federal court claiming my water rights exercise would violate interstate commerce because Clearstone supplies a tiny amount to Colorado via South Platte River connections. It was absurd, a desperate legal Hail Mary stretching Commerce Clause jurisdiction past breaking point. Judge denied it within 48 hours, called it frivolous and without merit. Vivian was running out of legal moves, which made her more dangerous. I spent those days preparing the final documentation for the state engineer. Hector helped me format everything to state specifications: beneficial use plan, environmental impact assessment, historical claim verification, every comma in place, no room for bureaucratic rejection. At night, I barely slept, kept checking the trail cameras on my phone. The white Lexus drove past twice more. Once at 1 a.m., once at 4 a.m., just slow rolling past, headlights off. Psychological warfare. Hector sat on the porch with his shotgun those nights. I made coffee at 5 a.m., and we watched the sunrise together in silence. You know, the watershed board meeting is in 8 days, he said on the morning of August 20th. I know. Ty's expose on Dalton publishes the day before. Iris has her testimony ready. Gil and 3 other ranchers are coming to speak. Everything's in place. Unless Vivian does something worse than arson. He looked at me. What could be worse? I didn't answer. Didn't want to give voice to the scenarios running through my head. August 21st, I hired private security 2 off-duty deputies rotating 12-hour shifts patrolling my property. Couldn't afford it, but couldn't afford not to. Paid them with money from the GoFundMe designated for legal fees. Figured staying alive counted as legal defense. August 23rd, I drove to Cheyenne, 6-hour round trip to hand-deliver the final water rights claim to the state engineer's office. Didn't trust mail, didn't trust anything. The clerk stamped it received at 2:34 p.m. You're all set, Ms. Coltrane. Barring any challenges, these rights are active as of August 25th. I took a photo of the stamped documents, sent it to Hector, Iris, Ty, Gil. Drove home as the sun dropped behind the Wind River Range, painting the mountains in shades of rust and purple. Sage smell through the open windows. That peculiar August heat that lingers even after dark. For the first time in weeks, my chest didn't feel tight. I thought about Thaddeus teaching me to read survey maps. Land doesn't lie, people do. But the law, when you knew how to use it, the law could be a weapon sharper than any knife. 2 days until the watershed meeting, 2 days until Vivian's empire either stood or collapsed. I parked my truck, walked inside, and found Hector making dinner pasta with jarred sauce because neither of us could cook worth a damn. Tomorrow Ty's article drops, he said. The Dalton expose. After that, there's no going back. Good, I said. I don't want to go back. We ate in comfortable silence. Outside, the first stars appeared, the windmill creaked, the pipeline hummed its underground song, and somewhere 3 miles east, in her marble clubhouse, Vivian Stroud was running out of moves. August 25th, 6 p.m., Fremont County Community Center in Lander. The parking lot was packed trucks with ranch brands, Ridgemont SUVs with HOA parking stickers, news vans from Casper and Cheyenne. I counted maybe 200 people crammed into a room built for 120, standing room only along the back wall. The smell of burnt coffee from the lobby mixed with nervous sweat and anticipation. The Fremont Watershed District Board sat at a long table up front. 7 folding chairs, 7 nameplates. Dalton Stroud's seat, second from the left, looked like an electric chair. He was already sweating through his shirt and the meeting hadn't even started. Eugene Colfax board chair, 72, fourth-generation rancher with a face like tanned leather banged a gavel at 6:08. Let's get started. We're here to review Ridgemont Estates' water allocation and address a formal complaint filed by Marlo Coltrane. Vivian sat front row, flanked by all 3 Caliber and Doss attorneys in matching Navy suits. She looked composed, expensive, like she'd already won and was just here for the formality. I sat in back with Hector, Iris, Ty, and Gil. Wanted to be able to see everyone's faces. Colfax nodded to Vivian's lead attorney, Pritchard. You've got 10 minutes. Pritchard stood, smoothed his tie. Ridgemont Estates has operated in good faith under the allocation granted in 2014. The delay in renegotiation was an administrative oversight, hardly grounds for suspension. Our community serves 2,200 families. Cutting their water supply based on a technicality would be unconscionable. He gestured to the crowd. We have a petition signed by 800 homeowners requesting this board protect their water access. Vivian took the microphone next, her voice cracked slightly calculated emotion. My neighbor's children will suffer because one bitter woman wants revenge for a construction easement legally granted by the county. Is that justice? Scattered applause from Ridgemont residents. Eugene Colfax looked unmoved. Ms. Stroud, motivation isn't our concern. Water law is. Mr. Ruiz, you're representing Ms. Coltrane? Hector stood. We are. And we'd like to call our first witness Iris Pendleton, hydrologist. Iris walked to the front table, set up her laptop, projected her model on the screen, color-coded maps showing water flow, consumption rates, downstream impacts. Ridgemont consumes 620 acre-feet annually. That's more than every other private domestic user combined. She clicked through slides. 3 ranches downstream have wells dropping 18 inches per year. Eastern Shoshone Fish Hatchery struggles to maintain juvenile cutthroat populations because creek flows are 30% below historical averages. Another click. And Ridgemont's watering non-native grass in a high desert that receives 12 inches of rain annually. Murmurs through the crowd. Next witness, Hector said. Gil Navarro. Gil stood, walked forward, spoke quietly but every word carried. Vivian Stroud offered me double market value for my southern pasture last year. I declined. 1 month later, county reassessed my property taxes up 32%. He looked at the board. 3 other ranchers here tonight experienced the same. Anyone want to call that a coincidence? 2 other ranchers stood, nodded confirmation. The room's energy shifted. You could feel it, like barometric pressure dropping before a storm. Final witness, Hector said. Tyrell Booker, investigative reporter. Ty had published his expose that morning, Casper Star Tribune front page. Undisclosed conflicts of interest on water board. Now he stood with a folder of documents. Dalton Stroud has voted yes on every Ridgemont allocation request since joining this board in 2021. He read from printouts. March 2022, approved clubhouse expansion requiring additional 140 acre-feet. January 2023, fast-tracked pipeline easement. June 2024, approved irrigation system upgrade. He looked up. Mr. Stroud never disclosed that Vivian Stroud, Ridgemont's HOA president, is his sister. The room erupted, shouts, people standing, cameras flashing. Eugene banged the gavel hard. "Order! Sit down or I'll clear this room." Dalton tried to speak. "This is a witch hunt, But Eugene cut him off. "Mr. Stroud, did you or did you not disclose a family relationship with Ridgemont's leadership when you voted on their allocations?" Silence. Dalton's mouth opened. Closed. He looked at Vivian. She was staring straight ahead, jaw tight. The relationship wasn't relevant to... Wyoming ethics statute doesn't care about relevance. It requires disclosure. Period. Eugene's voice was granite. "You've violated your oath of office. I'm recommending the Attorney General investigate every vote you've cast. This board will consider all decisions you participated in as potentially compromised." Dalton stood up and walked out. Just left. The room watched him go in stunned silence. Eugene called for a 15-minute recess. When the board reconvened at 8:10, the energy had completely shifted. Ridgemont's attorneys looked like they were attending a funeral. "We've reviewed the evidence," Eugene said. "First, Mr. Stroud's resignation is accepted effective immediately. Second, Ridgemont's allocation is suspended pending installation of water reclamation infrastructure meeting state conservation standards. Estimated cost $1.2 million. Third, Ms. Coltrane's senior water rights claim is recognized and approved." He looked at Vivian. "You have 90 days to install reclamation systems or your allocation will be permanently revoked. This meeting is adjourned." The gavel came down. Vivian stood up so fast her chair fell backward. Photographers caught her middle finger as she stormed out. Photo that would be on Reddit within an hour. Ridgemont residents sat in stunned silence. Some were crying. Most looked angry, but not at me. At Vivian, finally understanding she'd gambled their futures without telling them. I sat very still, Hector's hand on my shoulder. "You did it," he whispered. Outside, reporters swarmed. I gave a 2-sentence statement. Water is a public trust. It should serve the people who live on this land, not imported grass. Then got in my truck and drove home. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Ridgemont's bondholders panicked within 48 hours. Without guaranteed water, their $4.2 million loan was in default. Emergency HOA meeting happened August 27th. I heard about it from 3 different sources. Homeowners demanded answers. Where was the $4.2 million? Why wasn't the expired allocation disclosed? Why did no one know about Dalton Stroud? Vivian resigned September 3rd, moved to Arizona 2 weeks later. Her brother Dalton faced state ethics charges, case still pending as of this writing. The new HOA board, elected in emergency session, voted to assess a special levy, $2,800 per homeowner to fund the water reclamation system. Protests erupted. 40% of residents signed a petition to recall the entire previous board for fiduciary negligence. But here's what surprised me. Not all Ridgemont residents were enemies. September 12th, my barn raising. I'd planned to hire a crew, but word got out. 60 volunteers showed up at Dawn Ranchers I expected, but also 12 families from Ridgemont. They brought tools, coffee, sandwiches, worked all day in 90-degree heat. A woman about my age, name was Kendra, hammered alongside me for 3 hours. Finally said, "We didn't know what Vivian was doing. Most of us bought homes there because we wanted to retire somewhere beautiful. We're not all villains." "I know," I said, and I meant it. By November, the barn was rebuilt. Insurance money plus GoFundMe surplus covered it. Better than before, actually. Metal roof, proper ventilation, solar panels on the south side. The arson investigation went nowhere. No charges filed. But Vivian's landscaping contractor got arrested in October for an unrelated burglary, admitted during questioning that she'd paid him $5,000 to scare the rancher back in August. Vivian was indicted for conspiracy to commit arson. Trials set for next spring. Ridgemont's water reclamation system was installed by March 2026. Gray water recycling for the golf course, cutting their Clearstone draw by 55%. The new board hired Iris as a consultant. By summer, they'd converted half the golf course to native prairie 9 holes instead of 18. 60 acres returned to natural grasses that don't need irrigation. The new board president, a retired engineer named Marcus, called me in April. "We're having a community meeting about water conservation. Would you be willing to speak?" I know that's asking a lot. I thought about it for 2 days, then said yes. I stood in their clubhouse, same marble lobby where Vivian had dismissed me, and talked to 200 homeowners about sustainable ranching, water as a shared resource, and what my grandfather taught me about living within the land's limits. They gave me a standing ovation. Several people apologized. It didn't erase what happened, but it felt like the beginning of something better. The real legacy came from unexpected places. I partnered with the Eastern Shoshone tribe to co-manage Antler Creek, 50% of water reserved for cultural sites and tribal conservation projects, 50% for agricultural drought reserve. Wyoming named it a Conservation Priority Watershed in early 2026 model for other regions facing similar pressures. The leftover GoFundMe money, about $12,000, became the Antler Creek Scholarship. Sends 2 rural students annually to University of Wyoming's Water Resources Program. First recipients: a girl from my county, a boy from Wind River Reservation, both studying hydrology. We launched the annual Water Heritage Festival in September 2026, held at my ranch. 400 people came. Fly fishing lessons, native plant sales, speakers on water law and conservation. Local brewery made a commemorative beer, Senior Rights IPA. Proceeds go to the scholarship fund. Thaddeus's memorial is different now. Bronze plaque mounted on river stones surrounded by native wildflowers that a tribal youth group and Ridgemont volunteers planted together. Inscription reads, Thaddeus Coltrane, 1931 to 2019. He taught us water flows where it's needed most. May morning, I'm standing in the Cottonwood Grove. Meadowlarks singing again. Took them 6 months to come back after the construction, but they did. The pipeline still hums underground, but now it carries reclaimed water to half the grass it used to. Scout's gray around the muzzle now. He huffs, wants breakfast. I kneel by the memorial. Touch the bronze plaque, warm from early sun. We did it, Grandpa, I say quietly. We changed something. The wind picks up. Cottonwood leaves rustle like survey maps being folded and unfolded. Somewhere downstream, water flows to ranches that need it, to fish that spawn in clean creeks, to land that remembers how to breathe. Vivian thought she could bury the past to build her future. Turns out the land remembers everything, and so do the people who love it. I didn't win because I was smarter or richer or more powerful. I won because I had something worth fighting for, and people who'd fight alongside me, because I knew the rules better than the people who thought they owned them, because water doesn't lie, and neither does justice, when you're patient enough to let it flow. Now here's what I need from you. Drop a comment with your worst HOA nightmare. Petty tyrants, mysterious fees, rules that only apply to you. I want to hear it all. Because the more we talk about these stories, the harder it is for people like Vivian to operate in silence. And hit subscribe, because next week I'm telling you about the small-town librarian who used an 1870s mining claim to shut down a Bitcoin operation, stealing electricity from an entire county. That story involves blackmail, a town hall fistfight, and the best use of a century-old land patent you've ever heard. The fight for what's right doesn't end. It just finds new battlefields. But if you know the land, know the law, and know who your people are, you can win. I'm proof.
We appreciate you spending your time with us on HOA Stories, where HOA Karens finally get checked. If you enjoyed today's drama, hit like, comment on your favorite part below, and don't forget to subscribe so you'll be the first to catch our next HOA Showdown.